From the shadowed streets of London, where secrets travel faster than the evening fog, comes another adventure with Maud West, London's lady detective. Tonight, a ballroom glitters with fortune and folly. Beneath its chandeliers dance the wealthy and the watchful, and somewhere among them, a crime is waiting to be born. Satin whispers, a laugh too nervous, a waiter too swift to pass by. And in that moment, a fortune slips into the shadows. Before the last note of the waltz fades, a duchess will weep, an inspector will arrive, and one woman, Maud West, will already know that truth can vanish faster than a diamond's spark. Tonight's episode, The Vanishing Necklace.
London society glittered that night like a mirror turned on itself. Every gesture was a performance, every laugh a strategy. Grosvenor Hall smelled of powder and prosperity, and a touch of danger, for any room that bright hides its own shadows. The Duchess of Rothmere was the evening's constellation. 10 diamonds set in silver and confidence. They caught the light like a promise London could never keep. I was invited as a guest, or perhaps as insurance. The difference often depends on how expensive the jewels are. My heavens, the Duchess, her necklace, it's gone. Panic is a fashion here. It comes in seasons. I watched as the Duchess's hands flew to her throat and the room tilted toward chaos. Someone shouted for the police. Someone else for more champagne. Between the two, truth had a chance to escape. The lights had dimmed for the toast. A simple thing, but simplicity is the first ally of theft. When they came back up, our Duchess had lost 10 diamonds and a reputation. I saw a flash of silver by the servants' door, a tray abandoned, a shadow slipping through. I followed with my eyes, not my feet. The first to chase is rarely the first to catch. In moments like these, London teaches you patience. And sure enough, from somewhere down the street, a police whistle cut the air like a cold truth arriving too soon. I sighed. Order was about to arrive, wearing a uniform and a temper. And if the papers were right, he'd be young, serious, and altogether unimpressed by lady detectives.
A necklace lost, a room in uproar, and down the marble steps, Scotland Yard approaches. But in the crowd of glitter and guilt, one detective has already seen the trail the thief left shining behind him. Stay with us as Maud West meets the Yard's newest inspector.
Order always follows panic, though it usually arrives with muddy boots. The guests drew back as uniformed men cut through the perfume and confusion, blue sleeves brushing silk, brass buttons flashing under chandeliers. At their head came the inspector, tall, hat tilted just enough to mean business, coat dark from London drizzle. He moved like he'd been waiting all evening for someone to misbehave.
Ladies and gentlemen, remain where you are. Scotland Yard will handle this.
His voice carried that crisp Yard confidence, the kind that could silence gossip and start resentment in the same breath. Inspector, you might start with the windows. The servants' corridor leads to a lane, not the street.
You are?
A guest, temporarily, professionally.
Professionally. Ah, you're Maud West.
The name landed like a dropped teacup. Recognition mixed with surprise and a touch of scandal.
I didn't expect the evening's entertainment to include celebrity detectives.
Nor I, inspectors with decent posture. We're both surprised. He frowned, not out of anger but concentration, the way a man does when a puzzle refuses to sit politely on the page. His eyes traced the room, overturned chairs, spilled champagne, a single glove abandoned near the punch bowl.
Evidence first, witnesses later. Begin with the Duchess and her immediate circle.
The orchestra resumed softly, a courtesy to panic. Nothing calms society like pretending it isn't afraid. Finch's men spread out, tidy as chess pieces. I remained where I was. The Queen uninvited to move, but still the only one who could see the board. He glanced over once, perhaps to remind me that he was in charge, or perhaps to make sure I still was.
A ballroom restored to order, for now. A stolen fortune still missing, and two detectives circling the same truth from opposite ends of the dance floor. Upstairs, a dressing room waits. Silk, suspicion, and the first real clue.
Lady Peterson's dressing room was a small theatre of its own. Mirrors framed in gilt, perfume thick enough to suggest guilt, and a fire that burned more for decoration than warmth. The scent of powder clung to the curtains. Somewhere, a clock ticked with the sort of patience only guilt inspires. Finch entered behind me, his boots silent on the carpet, his coat still carrying the scent of London drizzle. His reflection appeared beside mine in the mirror, composed, deliberate, unreadable.
Evidence prefers procedure. We begin with who last handled the necklace.
His voice was precise, each word balanced like a paperweight. He moved with the quiet assurance of someone who believes facts can always be trusted, though I've never found them particularly loyal. If we're counting hands, Inspector, we may need a ballroom full of ink. Jewels draw more fingers than fame.
The Duchess confirms the clasp broke earlier this evening. It was repaired, hurriedly, by her maid.
Oh, the poor dear tried her best. The clasp was only meant to hold for an hour, perhaps two.
And yet it held until it mattered most.
He studied the velvet case on the vanity, careful not to touch it. The lining was creased, the shape still moulded to the missing stones. I leaned closer, not to admire, but to listen. Objects talk if you've the patience to let them. The maid's perfume lingers here. Lavender and cheap courage. She's the nervous type. Folds things too neatly to hide her shaking.
You can tell that from a scent.
A scent, a smudge, and a poorly folded letter. CL. Initials written in haste. It wanted to be a clue. It's a decoy.
Or it's evidence. You're too quick to decide.
He was standing close now, the kind of close that carries the faintest trace of tobacco and frustration. His notebook waited for logic. Mine lived in the quiet corners of intuition.
Let's test your theory, Miss West. Where would you hide 10 stolen diamonds in a room like this?
Not in a drawer. Too obvious. Not in the fire. Too poetic. And never on the thief. Guilt sweats, Inspector. It ruins the setting. He knelt by the hearth, tapping the iron grate as if secrets might ring hollow. The light flickered across his features, the sort of face built for rules, but not for riddles.
You make this sound like theatre.
It often is. Only the actors change, and the audience never learns. Inspector Finch, sir, said the maid nervously. The constables found a glove in the garden path.
I'll see it. Miss West, remain here.
Of course. I'll keep the mirrors company. He left with authority in his stride and doubt on his collar. When the door shut, the fire hissed, as if amused to find itself the only witness left. I turned back to the vanity. The perfume still lingered, but something else whispered beneath it. The faint musk of damp wool. A maid's perfume could deceive, but a man's overcoat never lies.
A mirror, a letter, and a clue that smells of rain. The maid may be missing, but the fog outside waits for no one. Down in the garden paths, another discovery waits, and it won't stay quiet for long.
The air outside Grosvenor Hall had changed. The laughter had thinned to memory, and the chandeliers inside glowed like ghostly spectators to a story that had moved beyond their reach. The gardens stretched ahead, dark, damp, and crowded with fog. The sort of fog London keeps in reserve for its best mysteries.
Stay close, Miss West. The constable swore he saw movement near the service lane.
Of course, Inspector. But you'll forgive me if curiosity outruns obedience. He didn't respond, only gave a look sharp enough to slice through mist. Rules were his refuge. Instinct was mine. Between us, the truth rarely had time to hide.
There, by the gate.
London fog is an accomplice by profession. It hides more than thieves. It rolled low across the path, swallowing the lamplight until even our shadows felt counterfeit. Ahead, a figure darted, a man clutching a small box tight against his chest. The clasp gleamed silver each time it caught the glow of a lantern.
Stop where you are.
The shape stumbled, caught himself, and looked back. A boy, barely 20. Panic had already outrun him. His eyes found mine, pleading, confused, terrified. I've done nothing. Let me be. I'd rather you didn't. Thieves tend to vanish when unattended. He struggled once, twice, but fear makes poor balance. I caught his arm before he fell, steadying him just long enough to ensure he couldn't run again. The box rolled twice and came to rest beside the lantern post. I bent to pick it up. Inside lay imitation jewels, paste stones and glass pearls, bright enough to deceive from a distance, worthless enough to discard. He wasn't a thief, just a pawn moved too soon.
Your definition of waiting seems liberal, Miss West.
Patience is a virtue, Inspector. But occasionally, so is initiative.
Take him to the carriage, Finch said to the constable. We'll see what story he tells when the fog's gone.
Finch crouched beside me to inspect the box, his breath hanging like a brief ghost between us. He brushed aside the false jewels, his brow furrowed, not in anger, but reluctant admiration.
These aren't the Duchess's diamonds.
No. Whoever staged the theft never wanted the jewels, only the confusion they'd cause.
Then we're dealing with more than a thief.
He looked back toward the ballroom, its glow blurred through the downpour. His silhouette stood half in shadow, half in duty, the border between order and instinct.
The real culprit's still in sight.
Precisely, and they've just learned how easily panic can hide a plan.
Then we'd best go back before the orchestra plays its last note.
Lead the way, Inspector. I promise not to run ahead. We turned back through the fog, side by side, as the rain began to wash away the night's illusions.
A chase through fog, a frightened pawn in custody, and a truth still glimmering among Grosvenor Hall's chandeliers. As the orchestra plays again, one final revelation waits, not in the ballroom's beauty, but in the ice where the night's deceit still shimmers.
The fog had followed us indoors, though here it wore the scent of perfume and denial. Guests hovered in clusters, voices threaded with forced laughter and uneasy relief. The constables had their pawn in custody, a terrified runner with a pocket full of paste jewels. But the real gambler was still here, and he was losing his nerve by the minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. Scotland Yard has the situation in hand.
An arrest. Thank heavens. Will the music resume? At the edge of the room, Mr. Latham, Her Grace's personal secretary, was fighting a battle between sweat and composure. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his gloves, the fingers still damp and creased as if fresh from ice water. I had seen hands like that before, at the scene of a search that went too well. Inspector, we may have our runner, but we've yet to meet his manager.
You believe the Duchess's secretary is in league with him?
I believe in patterns, Inspector, and his don't fit the decor.
This was found in the gardens, Mr. Latham. Recognize it?
Her Grace's stationery case. I asked the servants to clear her desk before the guests arrived. They must have misplaced it. His voice was a piano out of tune, each note landing where it shouldn't.
You seem unusually nervous for a man who's misplaced a box.
Perhaps because he knows what was inside it. The decoy jewels our runner carried.
Nonsense. I know nothing about that. Surely you don't think.
I think you searched for something in this room before we returned and found yourself in cold company. The punch bowl. Latham's eyes flicked there and back again, too fast for innocence. A single bead of water rolled from his cuff onto the marble.
Constable, bring a light.
Good Lord. The necklace!
From beneath the lemons and the melted ice, the Duchess's diamonds rose like drowned stars. Finch lifted them slowly, the chain glistening under gaslight, water running down his sleeve.
So, this was your idea of misplacing a box, Latham?
I only wanted to teach her Grace a lesson. She never trusted me, said I wasn't fit for the family's affairs. I meant no harm.
10 diamonds, a false theft, and a public scandal. That's quite an education you've given her.
Scotland Yard thanks you for your lesson, Mr. Latham. You may continue it in custody.
My necklace! It was here, all along. The Duchess trembled, half grateful, half humiliated. Society forgives crime faster than embarrassment. Finch set the necklace in her hands like a verdict, and the music found its way back to the room.
You saw it coming, didn't you?
I only watched who stopped applauding first. The case was closed, but the evening lingered, as they all do when truth and deception share the same dance card.
A necklace reclaimed, a mystery unveiled, and 2 detectives who found more than they intended in the dance of deception. But for Maud West, London's fog never clears for long. As the guests depart, another conversation waits beyond the hall. Quiet, personal, and just beginning.
London's streets after midnight belong to the rain. Lamps flicker like half-kept promises, and every cab becomes a confessional on wheels. Finch sat beside me, his hat shadowing half his face, the rest lit by the ghost of passing streetlights.
You made me look a fool in front of the Duchess.
Only briefly, Inspector, and only for sport.
You could have told me about the punch bowl.
I could have, but then you'd have missed your moment of revelation. And I never steal those from a man who works so hard to earn them.
You know, I thought you were another of those society women who read too much fiction and fancied herself clever.
And now?
Now I think you're clever enough to be dangerous.
Flattery from Scotland Yard. I may frame that.
You seem to enjoy the chase.
The chase I tolerate. The truth, that's what keeps me awake.
And here I thought it was the tea.
He smiled without looking at me. It was the kind of smile a man offers when he knows a door has been opened, but hasn't yet decided whether to walk through. The car turned onto Berkeley Square, puddles reflecting the lamps like scattered constellations. I caught my own reflection in the window. Tired eyes, curious still, unwilling to rest while London's secrets kept their vigil.
We'll have the boy released. He's frightened, not guilty.
Good. He'll learn the value of honesty. The hard way, but the lasting one.
You sound like a philosopher, Miss West.
Every detective is, Inspector. Only our sermons are whispered. The cars slowed before my street. Quiet, modest, unlit. Finch reached for the door but hesitated.
Perhaps next time you'll let me assist from the start.
If Scotland Yard can keep up.
That sounds like a challenge.
Good night, Inspector. Do remember, truth may hide, but it never sleeps.
Good night, Miss West.
I stood beneath the awning, listening to the rain, watching the tail lights disappear into London's blur. The city sighed, content for now, but never cured. I keep no trophies, only thoughts. The Duchess will forget her fear before the week's out. Finch will file his report with all the right facts, and London will invent a new scandal to replace the old one. But somewhere between logic and intuition, there's a truth that keeps its own diary. It never needs applause, only understanding. Tonight, I've learned that deception often hides in plain sight, and sometimes the purest lies wear the brightest jewels. Until the next inquiry, I remain Maud West, private inquirer, amateur philosopher, and reluctant optimist.
And so ends tonight's case from the private files of Maud West, London's lady detective. The vanishing necklace has found its way home, but the city's shadows have not grown any shorter. Join us next time for another adventure in the world of intrigue and illusion, when fate crosses the cards in her next investigation, the fortune teller of Belgravia.